First of all, thank you very much for being here. Like I said to you in my email, I've been a huge fan of your work for many, many years, and I've been immensely enjoying your podcast, Ask a Spaceman. For anyone who hasn't for some unknown reason like checked it out, you should go and do it. And I've been like immensely enjoying your books. In particular, your place in the universe, and I'd love to ask some questions regarding its content, but yeah, I'm just very grateful that you've decided to take some time, out of your schedule to sit down and chat with me. It means a lot. you know,
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
yeah. And to begin with, I'd like to. Um, no, I've always been asking this kinds of big questions, for I guess for as long as I could remember, like where we came from, and how it all works at a deep level, and I guess that must be the case with you also, and can you kind of remember maybe as a 10-year-old, you had thoughts in your head about like what are we doing here and why the universe is the way it is, maybe because I guess that goes really far back for you. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I remember as a kid, I have very fond childhood memories of just reading as many books as I possibly could. I consumed books. I was just a sponge. We lived out in the countryside. We had gorgeous night skies. I would see the stars very often, especially in the summertime. And so I was just curious. I just wanted to know, and I just wanted to feed that hunger for knowledge. So I was always reading books, not just limited to space and astronomy and physics. I was reading books about biology, about dinosaurs, about chemistry, about geology. I just enjoyed reading as much as possible, and that is something I still carry to this day. I love reading about topics outside of my own expertise. If there's an interesting book and an interesting topic, I'm all for it. And but interestingly enough, even though I loved science and I loved reading about science, as a kid, I never realized that I could make science my job. I never realized that scientist was a profession, was a career, a job that I could have. And so growing up as a kid, I would enjoy science, but never thought of myself as a scientist. And in fact, I went into college as a computer science major. So, computer programming, software engineering, still like a super nerd, but not realizing that I could do science. And it was in my third year of college. I was taking an astronomy class. It was an optional course. It sounded like fun. I'd always enjoyed learning about astronomy, but this was my first time encountering astronomy as a discipline, as a career. And it blew my mind to take one level deeper, to go from the books and articles and stories that I had read about and start to learn about the mathematics behind it, and start to learn about how we actually understand the world and the universe around us. And I was blown away. I had never thought of astronomy or physics in this way before. And I remember distinctly talking to my professor, having a conversation with him, and him saying, "Yeah, Paul, you can switch majors if you want to." And it's like my mind was blown. My earth completely changed in that moment. I had never had someone before tell me that I could be a scientist if I wanted to be one. And so less than a week later, days after that conversation, I switched majors to physics, and I've never looked back since.
Yeah. Okay.
It was different. I owned a telescope as a kid. I loved looking up at the night sky as a kid. I remember asking myself these kinds of profound questions. Where does it all come from? How big is it? Are we alone in the universe? All these fantastic questions that humans across the earth share. Um, and that was one part of my journey into curiosity. And in fact, I didn't even get into cosmology until graduate school. When I applied for graduate school, I was very open-ended. I was interested in a lot of different topics, and it was in graduate school that I took this menu of curiosities, of questions I was asking, and picked cosmology.
And so I'd like to ask you also, in your book, Our Place in Your Place in the Universe, you talk a bit about this Danish astronomer Tycho Brahe, right? And and you give a lot of credit to him, and you go even as far as to say that he's perhaps the most important astronomer ever, right, in history. And I would be curious to know, because I guess not that many people have heard even of the name, and probably don't know much about him. If you maybe can share like one of your favorite stories about him, and why you think that his work was so important and like foundational to the field.
Oh, yeah. So Tycho Brahe is this amazing astronomer living in Europe in the late 1500s. So he's living at the same time as Copernicus, Kepler, and Galileo. He dies a little bit after Copernicus and a little bit before Kepler and Galileo, but he's in the mix. And he is perhaps the most sophisticated astronomer of that era. And in fact, I would say he ranks up there of all the astronomers who were observing the night sky prior to the invention of the telescope. He is up there, definitely top five and a contender for first place. And Tycho Brahe made an enormous number of contributions. And one of his biggest contributions was, uh, in fact, a sophisticated argument against the idea that the sun is at the center of the universe. So, prior to the scientific revolution of the late 1500s, we have what we call the geocentric model of the universe, which is that astronomers and physicists and theologians and basically everybody in Europe at the time believed that the earth was at the center of the universe and we were surrounded by the planets, the moon, the sun, and then at the outermost edges of the universe was the stars themselves, and everything orbited around the earth. And this model was very accurate. It was very sophisticated. It was very complex. It could accurately predict the motions of planets in the sky, very, very accurately. And we have to remember, we have to go back in time to this era where planets were just simply dots of light. That was it. We didn't think of, if you could go back in time 500 years and start talking about Mars, we have in our head the image of Mars, the polar ice caps, the Valles Marineris, Olympus Mons, the rover images. We have all this information about Mars as an object, as a planet, as a world that people even 500 years ago did not have. To them, Mars was simply a red dot of light in the night sky. They had no conception of these planets as worlds onto their own. And so what they were concerned with was making accurate predictions for the motions of those planets. And Copernicus, living at the same time, made a bold suggestion that maybe this idea, the geocentric model, maybe it has shortcomings, maybe it's not good at describing the data. that maybe an alternative model called the heliocentric model, or the model where the sun is at the center of the universe, maybe that can do a better job. Maybe that can resolve these issues, and instead of everything orbiting around the Earth, maybe everything orbits around the sun. Tycho Brahe was very interested in this hypothesis. A lot of people were very interested in this hypothesis, this idea. And there were debates swirling throughout Europe for half a century about whether this idea had any merit or not. And Tycho Brahe was always a colorful person, always a character. Apparently, he had a brass nose because he got his real nose cut off during a duel. He was always showing up in the courts of European nobility, always making big claims, and he decided to test this idea. And he tested this idea based on something called parallax, which is if you change your point of view, objects will appear in different locations. So, a very simple experiment that you can do at home is to hold your finger in front of your face and close one eye. And then, as you switch eyes, as you switch points of view, your finger appears to jump from place to place. So Tycho Brahe took this idea of the heliocentric universe, the sun-centered universe, and said, look, if we are orbiting around the sun, then our orbit is enormous. It's tens of millions of miles, if not more. And so as we go from one side of the sun to the other, then if we look out at the distant stars, those stars should appear to shift their position. If I look at the stars in the summer, they'll be in a slightly different position than when they are in the winter. And so he went out to make these observations, and he had an incredibly sophisticated observatory at Uraniborg in Denmark. And he was uh, able to make incredibly precise measurements of the positions of planets, of stars, of anything he wanted out there in the universe. And he was doing this all without a telescope. This is just prior to Galileo's invention of the astronomical telescope. So he's doing it all with the naked eye, but using very precise measurements, and he measured no parallax at all. So over the course of a year, the stars stayed exactly where they were. And so he said, look, if we live in a sun-centered universe, we ought to see the shifting of these stars, and we don't. And so the most favorable conclusion is that the Earth is at the center of the universe, because if the Earth is at the center of the universe, we never move. And so summer to winter, fall to spring, the stars should never shift in their positions. It turns out the Earth does orbit around the sun. Other pieces of evidence would accumulate to give us that insight, but it wouldn't be until the 1800s, over 200 years later, that someone would finally be able to measure the parallax shifting of a star over the course of a year. That's how much telescope technology had to improve in order to get that kind of observation. It was simply inaccessible to the people of the late 1500s.
Yeah, sure. We should give him more credit, I guess, because yeah, he's not nearly as recognized or like as Galileo and Newton, or the other guys. But in some sense, yeah, uh, his work was more difficult because it was like you said, pre like before the invention of the telescope. And now I'd like to let's go all the way back to the beginning of time, okay? If that sounds good.
Sure, always a good topic.
Yeah, or at least as far back as science can take us. And so like I'm like, very much a layperson. Like I want to admit that. And my understanding as a layperson is that I guess like a certain period in our distant past like uh, 380,000 years, right, since the Big Bang, and we can see past that with light, and it's opaque to light, right? But potentially with gravitational waves maybe, and it's. I also I remember asking Sean Carroll, who I guess who you might have heard of, yeah, or maybe you have met him, and Sean. When I was asking him about the question, like, what's the one mystery that he would love to see solved in his lifetime? He said it will be like what happened at the Big Bang. But for me, it's just such an an incredible idea to try and wrap my head around that we could actually try and like measure at least maybe indirectly what happened at t equals 0. It's just just incomprehensible to me. And uh, do you feel like that's like something that we might actually do in our lifetime? This kind of that we could find this quantum gravity, this theory that might give us a clue to what happened, or because for me it would just change everything, though. because then like what about those like religious folks, what they might say, because they like you, you would often get comments for them that like God started it all, because we don't understand what happened at the very moment of the Big Bang. So they're just free to say that like we must invoke God here, but if we understand like the point of creation, then like what's there is no room for God. I'm just curious, what are your thoughts on this? Yes, obviously a very big question, and would be hard to say anything like precise, but maybe you have uh, some thoughts to share.
Yeah, that's a very, very profound question, is this question of the origin of the Big Bang. And even if we were to explain the Big Bang, there is still room for divinity. If you are faithful, and I'll get to that. And but the main problem we face is that we live in an expanding universe, which means in the distant past, the universe was much smaller and hotter and denser. And we can track, we can follow the physics of the evolution of the universe very, very, very far back in time. We understand the physics, we understand the mathematics, we know how to grapple with this, we know how to make predictions that we can verify against observations. So we feel very, very strongly and very confident about the overall Big Bang picture, because we understand the physics, we make predictions, we match to observations. That is science. That is real, just genuine basic science, and we're able to do that. But we do reach our limits. When our universe was incredibly young, roughly around a second old, this is where our physics starts to break down. And that is an amazing statement in and of itself, that once the universe is older than a second, the temperatures and densities and pressures are low enough that we are able to understand it largely with the physics that we understand. But once the universe is roughly less than a second old, that's where we start to run into trouble, and where it becomes very mysterious and very speculative. We simply don't have the mathematical language. We simply don't have the physical insight to understand the state of matter in such an extreme condition. And in fact, one of our most powerful theories, the theory of general relativity, which gives us the Big Bang picture, which gives us the overall story of the expansion of the universe, according to the general theory of relativity, our universe started in a singularity, in a point of infinite density, where everything in the universe is crammed down into an infinitely tiny point. That's wrong. We know that's wrong. We know that it is an incomplete picture of the universe. We know that general relativity is giving up. When we ask general relativity, what happens to the orbit of planets around stars, it can give us an answer. When we ask general relativity, what does the outside of a black hole event horizon look like, it tells us the answer. When we ask general relativity, what was the state of the universe in its earliest moments, general relativity blows up, it breaks down. It does not give us any sensible answers, and so we can't get physics done anymore. The true answer of what happens in the earliest moments of the universe, the earliest moments of the Big Bang, lies in what we call quantum gravity, which is a theory of gravity at very, very small scales, at tiny, tiny submicroscopic scales. We do not have this theory. We have been trying for nearly 100 years to describe what happens to gravity at extremely small scales, and we keep missing the mark. We keep messing up. We keep not getting right answers. Every time we try to craft a theory of quantum gravity, it falls apart. We have a lot of attempts. Attempts like string theory are potentially promising avenues to build a quantum theory of gravity, but we don't have it. And so right now, the earliest moments of the universe remain very mysterious and very speculative. Okay, we're working on it. We're trying to develop a theory of quantum gravity. It's possible that in the next few decades, we might come up with some creative insight. We might be able to come up with some way to explain what's happening in the earliest moments of the universe. And once we're able to crack open that singularity and see what the universe is up to in its earliest moments, we will not necessarily meet a point of creation. We will not necessarily meet, say, the beginning of the universe, because we don't even know if that sentence even makes sense. When we are at such extreme scales in time and space, we don't even know if the normal ordering of cause and effect still holds. We may find that our universe, what we call the Big Bang, was sparked by something else, by some other physical process. The journey will not be over when it comes to quantum gravity. But even if you are able, say you are able to develop some clever scheme in physics where you can explain all of the universe, everything that happens, find the origin point, or find that the universe has existed forever, there is still room for the divine here. And that's because we cannot explain the existence of the universe in and of itself. We cannot explain why there is something rather than nothing. And even if we were to find some physical process, some set of physical laws that could create a universe out of nothing, well, then now we need to explain why there are physical laws in the first place. There didn't have to be physical laws. There didn't have to be mechanisms that could spring a universe into existence. No matter what, and this is a very deep, very old philosophical and theological question, which is, why is there something rather than nothing? We have no satisfactory answer to that. And so you can always, if you wish, point to the divine here and say, there is some supernatural cause for the reason why there are physical laws rather than no physical laws.
Yeah, okay. And so the James Webb Space Telescope, right? Let's fast forward a bit, from the beginning of time to like the emergence of first stars and galaxies, which is like one of the things it was designed to do, right? And I'm first, I am amazed by just how perfect it all went, right, during the launch, and the like subsequent unfolding, because like all the layers had to be unfolded and so on. But also uh, it's amazing now because it's already brought like delivered some amazing science to us, right, during its operation. And so I'd be happy to hear, what for you has been like the most, remarkable or surprising discovery that has come out of, the James Webb like data or images. If you can pick one,
Oh
maybe,
yeah.
or maybe several, because there's been it's been many. Yeah, yeah.
There are a lot. There are a lot because the James Webb is a fantastic instrument. And yes, it was very, very late. And it was over budget. It was also the most intricate, complex, largest telescope we've ever put into space, and it was one of a kind. There was no other instrument or telescope ever like James Webb until we built it and put it up, and it is delivering on its promise of scientific discovery after scientific discovery. One of the areas of research that I'm most interested in when it comes to the James Webb is its studies of the very early universe. We have a gap in our knowledge when it comes to cosmology in studying the entire universe. There's a big gap. We know a lot about the very early universe. And in fact, there's leftover light from the very early universe, something we call the cosmic microwave background that we can observe, we can study, we can map. And so we actually have a very, very accurate, intimate picture of the extremely early universe. And we have detailed surveys of the modern day universe, of the present day universe. We've mapped hundreds of millions of galaxies out there in the universe. But there's this gap in the middle that we have a hard time observing. This gap before the first stars, before the first galaxies started to appear. The universe is dark then. There's no source of light from starlight or from galaxies. And so there's nothing for us to see with a traditional telescope. We call this era of the universe the Dark Ages, and we call the appearance of the first stars and galaxies the cosmic dawn. And we have very, very little information about this major, transformative, pivotal epoch in the history of the universe. This is when the first stars appeared. This is when the first galaxies grew up. This is when the first giant black holes began to form. This is when what we think of as the universe first started to emerge in this epoch, which happened when the universe was a few 100 million years old. So definitely within its first billion years. The James Webb Space Telescope is designed to pierce into the cosmic dawn. It is trying to observe some of the first stars and galaxies to appear in the universe. These stars may have been very, very strange. They may be very different than the stars that we see in the universe today. The first galaxies to appear were much smaller than modern day galaxies. We want to know how quickly did they form? What did they look like? What were their structures? What kinds of stars inhabited those first galaxies? We want to understand their relationship to the first giant black holes to appear and how the growth of these black holes was connected to the growth of galaxies. So this is a very pivotal epoch. The James Webb is just starting to release some very, very interesting data. And what we're seeing are a lot of surprises, which is good. We built this instrument to give us surprises. We built this instrument to study an era that we have never studied before. And so we honestly didn't know what to expect. What we're finding in general with the results from the James Webb Space Telescope is that galaxies are appearing much faster and becoming much larger and brighter than we naively expected. We have very rough models of the formation of stars and galaxies in this epoch. We have a vague understanding of the physics that carries through to form the first stars and galaxies. And in that vague understanding, even though it's naive, it's based on, everything we know in astrophysics. stars and galaxies take a long time to ramp up. But what we're finding with the James Webb is that stars and galaxies appear very, very quickly. And when they do appear, they are much larger and brighter than we would have expected. So this doesn't break cosmology. It doesn't invalidate the overall Big Bang picture. Everything that the James Webb is telling us is compatible with the overall Big Bang evolution of the universe. But it is telling us we're missing something. It is telling us that there is something happening in the early universe that we do not expect, some sort of process or mechanism or influence that is not a major player in today's universe. But when we take the physics of today's universe and import it back to the cosmic dawn, we get the wrong answer. So there has to be something else going on in the universe. We don't know why the galaxies are larger than they should be. We don't know why they're brighter than they should be. We don't know why the stars are bigger than they should be. We don't know yet because we built the James Webb to give us this information. It's giving us information. It's telling us our naive assumptions about how the early universe operates are a little off. And we've got some work to do, which is always an exciting place to be in. When the universe gives us surprise after surprise after surprise, this isn't cause for concern. This is cause for celebration because it means there is a new mystery to solve and there is something new to learn about how the universe works.
And one of the other things that this telescope was designed to do is to study the atmospheres of exoplanets, right? This so-called these planets orbiting other stars in other galaxies, and so like for me the natural question then would be to ask you, there is this very famous Fermi paradox, like why we haven't seen any alien life or at least any signals, signs of them. And you know, like it does baffle me a lot when you try and think about the vastness, of space and like this enormity of and also of time, and like so far nothing, right? Nothing has really that's been like really convincing, like no signs of intelligent life, and it's and some would even say, like people like Stephen Hawking, that intelligent life has yet to emerge on this planet. like I'd love to ask, I'd love to focus on there is like a bunch of different reasons, scenarios that people have proposed, like that, for why we haven't seen any, and I'd like to just lay out those three, and like maybe you can pick the one that's feels most likely to you. So there is the one version that you talk about in your book, that space is just so big and like huge, and they would like if there are like intelligent beings out there, they would just say to themselves it's not so smart to try and travel across like billions of or millions of light years. Just doesn't make any sense. But and then the other version is that once a civilization reaches a certain point in like technological development, they they're basically like doomed to destroy themselves. like and like what we've seen here on this planet like bugs this up a bit, I guess, because we're so close to like basically wiping ourselves out. And the the third like scenario, or like potential reason for why we haven't seen any, is that maybe they're just so far advanced that they're not interested in us, like the same way that we're not interested in many other creatures here on this planet, in like in the ants or whatever. They just they go about their daily business, and we don't care much about them. So maybe like which of the possible explanations like feels most likely to you personally? I'm just curious.
Yeah, it's this fantastic, very deep and sometimes troubling question, which is why does it look like we're alone? Which is the universe is gigantic. There are hundreds of billions of stars in the Milky Way galaxy. There's something like 2 trillion galaxies in the observable universe. Very, very rough estimates of our own galaxy. We estimate there's somewhere around 5 billion copies of Earth, of planets about our size around sun-like stars with the right orbit. And so if life happened here and intelligent life happened here, then it's reasonable to assume that it happened elsewhere, that there are other planets teeming with life, other planets with intelligent species. And then if you can march on the road to technological process where you can start spreading yourself around a galaxy, or at least sending robotic craft, crawling throughout the entire galaxy, then where is everybody? This is the heart of Fermi's paradox. And I believe, and this is not based on any science whatsoever, it's just my own gut instinct. I think the best answer to it is that we are not alone in the universe, that there's other life out there, even in the Milky Way, that there's likely other intelligent life out there in the Milky Way, and the wider universe, but that we are effectively alone. And that's because the scales of time, of space, of energy are so vast in the universe, in a galaxy. They are so far beyond our normal conceptions of time, space, and energy that we don't truly appreciate it. Where even the nearest star, our next nearest neighbor star, Proxima Centauri cannot hear our loudest radio broadcasts. Our radio broadcasts, our most powerful radio broadcasts, are so weak that by the time they reach Proxima Centauri, they are swamped by just the radio noise of the galaxy itself. That if you had a radio antenna, a giant radio dish on a planet orbiting Proxima Centauri, you would not be able to hear our radio transmissions. Travel to other stars is incredibly slow. Even our fastest spacecraft would take tens of thousands of years to reach Proxima Centauri. And schemes developed to accelerate spacecraft up to fractions of the speed of light fast enough that you could start reaching stars in the matter of decades require so much energy that it's not even close to being on the horizon of human capabilities. Now, that doesn't rule out an advanced civilization coming up with the technology, being able to send spacecraft. But the truth is that even an alien civilization, an advanced civilization that is able to live for 1,000,000 years, 10 million years, 100 million years, an incomprehensibly vast amount of time compared to how long we've had civilization here on the earth. And if they were to make a home, to colonize hundreds of star systems, thousands of star systems, tens of thousands of star systems, it would just be a blink. 100 million years is nothing compared to a galaxy. 10,000 stars is nothing compared to a galaxy. The impact of any one intelligent species is almost zero, and our likelihood of detecting that species, of finding evidence for that species, is also incredibly low. Even if they were active on 10,000 stars right now, the galaxy is just too big, and we're just getting started. I do think that sometime in the next few decades or centuries, we will find evidence for an alien intelligence, that we will see a radio signal that is clearly artificial, that we will see some techno signature, something orbiting another star that is obviously artificial. I strongly suspect that with enough time, with decades or centuries of effort, that we will find evidence for another alien civilization. And which will be great because then we'll know we're not alone. Also, in the next few decades, I'm very confident that we will find evidence for life on other planets. Maybe not intelligent life, but microbial life or macroscopic life, life that is capable of changing the chemistry of its own planetary atmosphere. That's something we can detect. And that's something I strongly suspect we will detect in the coming decades or centuries. But then after that, that's it. That distant planet where we see evidence for life, we're not going to visit it anytime soon. If we detect a radio transmission that is definitely artificial in origin and generated by intelligence, we're not going to send a message back because it took tens of thousands of years for that signal to reach us. That's it. So we've barely been looking. Even a galaxy teeming with life is barely detectable. And we've just gotten started seriously looking for other intelligent civilizations. Give us some time, we'll find that evidence, but then we will also run into these limits of time, of space, of energy, and we'll be essentially alone. And that's okay.
Yeah, and in your public outreach, in your work in science communication, you, as you know, you like to explore the intersection of science and art, right? And I remember like seeing one of your interviews, and where you talked about this wonderful exploration of the nature of time that you did with who would later become your wife, right? And yeah, it just it strikes me because we often have this perception in society, and I'd love to hear what you think about it. That you know somehow people can enjoy like art, music, literature, science, or not science, but all these other like areas of human inquiry just easily, like no problem. But somehow when it comes to science or like physics or any other branch of science, um, somehow it seems like it's this separate human activity, of interest only to like of handful of geeks like with glasses or just something like this. But I think like what your work in science communication has been all about is like saying, you don't have to be a PhD level expert, right, to really enjoy this stuff and to find it fascinating and to want to learn more about it. So I'm just curious now, how would you respond to that notion that science is somehow disconnected from these other like areas of human inquiry, and whereas in your work, I know you try and connect it all. But how would
Absolutely. So there is this myth that you mentioned that science is inaccessible, that it's performed by people in elite universities and involves a lot of math and a lot of jargon and cannot be approached by someone who doesn't have a decade of training. And that was the impression I had growing up, that I was reading these books and it's like, okay, this is stuff done by other people, done by people smarter than me. And while I can appreciate from the outside, I can't participate in it. And that's absolutely wrong. There are so many ways to connect to science. And there are so many people who are turned off by science because they feel like it's inaccessible, like it's too difficult, that they don't understand the importance, they don't understand the value, and they don't understand the relevance to their everyday life. And that's through no fault of their own. Scientists do not do a great job of communicating their work. We are not out there as much as we should be, which is something I constantly refrain. And so, in one of my aspects of communicating science to the public is by working with artists, by finding ways to connect to audiences who are never going to buy my book, who are never going to listen to my podcast, who are never going to show up for one of my live events. They would never even think there's like, oh, okay, a science talk. Like I'm never interested in that. And it's my goal to show them that they are interested in that. They just haven't been given an opportunity to appreciate it in a way that they enjoy. And so I work with many artists, and I started a collaboration in 2017. So 8 years ago now, with a dance company here in New York City called Siren Modern Dance. And I was looking to use dance to express some scientific concepts, and here was a dance company that were looking for scientists who were not afraid to collaborate with scientists, and were looking for interesting connections between science and art. And we started working together. We got connected through a mutual connection. The choreographer Kate and I became very good friends and very good coworkers. And then 2 years ago, we got married and we decided to collaborate on a family. And so I encourage my fellow scientists to collaborate with artists. You don't have to marry them if you don't want to, but you can still enjoy the collaboration. And in this collaboration, we created an entire dance performance called TikTok, which explores the nature of time. I narrate two sections of it. It's set to Mozart. It's set, and it's a beautiful exploration of what we understand about time through physics, through the lens of physics. Things like relativity, things like time dilation, things like entropy and the arrow of time. It explores all those concepts through my narration. But then in the piece itself, it also explores our human connection to time, our human connection to loss and memory and anticipation, and why days can go by and it feels like a blink. And then some moments seem to last forever, and our own conscious awareness of time and the passage of time and how that affects us. And so it's a beautiful piece, a beautiful blending of scientific perspectives and artistic perspectives on this concept like time that we all share in common and yet have a very hard time describing. And so we're very lucky we get to perform it around the world. It's still being performed today. And it's a wonderful opportunity to reach new audiences and bring concepts like relativity and entropy to audiences who would never in a million years intersect a topic like that.
But it just makes a lot of sense to me because, when, for example, ask ourselves what is life or what is love, all this like different areas of inquiry, they would approach this question very differently. Obviously, like the scientist, the biologist, would speak of life in terms of like evolution and natural selection and genes. But then like poets and musicians, they would have a very different view of it, obviously. And but these are all to me just as vital because they're all just like these attempts to make sense of this, of our position in this universe and this like of we're just thrust into this like reality and we're just trying to make sense of it. If you could elaborate, I don't know.
Yeah, that's it. We scientists are not alone in our explorations of the universe. All of us, humanity, since the dawn of our own conscious awareness, we find ourselves in a universe that we do not understand and we cannot control. And we've asked for generations, for thousands of years, Why? What is this place? What is it like? How are we supposed to understand it? How are we supposed to frame our own relationship to the universe? Why is it the way it is? It could have been any other way, but why is it this way? Um, this is a journey that philosophers go down, that theologians go down, that scientists go down, and it's also a journey that artists go down. Artists every single day grapple with the universe we find ourselves in, with the nature of our own conscious awareness and our feelings and our relationships to each other and to the wider universe. We all wrestle with the exact same themes, and we return to it again and again using the tools of our trade, using our training, trying to understand the wider universe and bring it into context, and trying to understand our relationship to it. And so that's why it felt very natural to start working with artists once I had that realization that, yeah, the scientists are not alone. I employ a very specific toolkit in my investigations of the universe, but that doesn't mean I'm the only one out here trying to understand the universe. I'm surrounded by people who have the exact same goals that I do and are confronting the exact same mysteries that I am confronting, and that we can work together. And so this collaboration, when I collaborate with artists, it's not just about creating a performance or creating a film. It's about a shared exploration. It's about a shared journey, and it's about informing each other about our own work and how that can influence and reflect upon each other's work.
But science, for me, it's obviously a very powerful tool that we have developed, but it does have its limits, right? And, for example, when I try and ask myself, like, why should I get up every morning? Why should I live? Obviously, science can't answer that question, or like, or what is love? Not at the like. At the level of neurons or whatever, but what's like the experience of love like, and for me, it's that's exactly where folks like poets or dancers or like musicians come in, because they can illuminate it from a very, very different point of view, maybe. I guess here.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Science does not have all the answers. There are many, many questions in daily life and in the wider universe that we are not equipped to answer. We encountered one of these questions in this very interview, which is, even if we find a way to explain the existence of the universe through physical law, there's no tool in physics that can allow us to explain why there exist physical laws in the first place. Why is there physics for us to understand? Um, some people use that to point to the divinity. Some people point to that there may be other philosophical ways to tackle this. But no matter what, that is a question that cannot be answered within science itself. When it comes to time, we know a lot about time through physics, but we also are not able to explain the experience of time and our conscious perception of the flow of time. Why is the past so different than the future? We don't know. And science may never have the capabilities to answer that question. So science is incredibly unique and incredibly powerful. It is not all encompassing in our inquiries into this beautiful, strange universe.
Okay, just a fun question. If I may ask you, if what's like the one scientist that you from human history that you would love to talk to? If if we like, besides Tycho Brahe, or maybe there's like or maybe not scientists, maybe we can go like further back in time, maybe like some ancient philosophers that we would love to chat with. Yeah, if you could pick one, maybe.
Oh wow, that is a tough question because There's so many to choose from. Definitely staying away from Tycho Brahe as much as I admire him. He had a penchant for duels, and he means business. He was willing to lose a nose over it. So I don't want to risk getting into an argument with him. So we'll leave that to the side. And oh, wow. I think I would want to go very far back in time because I feel like Copernicus, Galileo, Newton, Maxwell, Einstein, like they all have like biographies written about them. And we don't know the entirety of the human person, but we know a lot about them. And so I would love to go back in time to some like go to like deep like Plato or Aristotle, someone from antiquity, someone who we know very very little about, who is obviously brilliant and obviously approaching the universe, approaching these questions from very very different directions, and um and have a dialogue with them and have a conversation with them and exchange notes and see if I could uh get that person, that ancient philosopher, to see the world the way I see it, see if I can make a convincing case, and then also hear about the universe from their perspective, not just from the writings that have survived these thousands of years, but from the person themselves. So if I were to had to meet one person, I'll go with Aristotle and go all the way back.
Yeah, people like to criticize him, saying like how much stuff he got wrong, but it's uh, it's a bit weird for me because he, he didn't have the benefit of all this knowledge that we have accumulated
Oh
since
yeah.
like
Oh yeah.
modern science. And I'd like to ask you also about, I don't know how much time you have left.
I
Because
have to go in 4 minutes because I have another appointment.
okay, okay. So then my final question of I always ask. The scientists that I get to talk to about, I come from Ukraine, and we've been dealing with this Russian invasion for like more than 3 years now, and it's been like just heartbreaking to see all this violence and so many deaths and so on, and I remember you also said in your email that you had the chance to attend a conference in Kharkiv, right? And maybe if you could say a few words about like what was that experience like for you, if you remember, and like it's a two-part question, and what kind of message uh, you would like to share with us, Ukrainians, maybe maybe give us a little bit of perspective, on how to handle this
Yeah.
situation, because I find it fascinating because people like who do what you do, who study the universe, I guess they have a certain perspective on the human condition, and they understand so much about this world, and maybe there are some like words of wisdom that you could share with us.
Yeah, so in 2018 I had the wonderful opportunity to visit Ukraine, and I went to the University of Kharkiv for a conference. It was a wonderful conference. I have many delightful memories from my week there. From there in Kiev, I was able to spend a few days there before returning home. I believe I ate Vareniki every single day. I certainly tried my best to have at least one dish of Vareniki every single day. A part of my own ancestry is from Slovakia, so right across the hills from Ukraine. And making pierogi was part of my upbringing. It's something I still make around holidays today. A recipe passed down from my grandparents, and so it's delightful to visit a country right next to a region of my own ancestry. And the only message I have for Ukrainians is that you are not alone, that despite what the Trump administration may say and do, he does not represent most of us. Um, that most Americans think of you, worry about you, want the best for you, want to find ways to help you, continue to support you, and um, and be there for you, and that uh, most Americans, the vast majority of Americans, the people I know, the people across this country, have not left you behind, despite what our administration may say or do, and that we will always find ways to support you.
Well, it's been an immense pleasure for me to to get to talk to you. Like I told you, already, I've been a huge fan of your work. Like, love your podcast and all of your books. And I like to think of people who do what you do, like who spread knowledge and understanding as like the DNA of civilization. Like, in the same way that genes pass on information from generation to the generation. So like folks like you, you're charged with the task of passing on knowledge and and understanding to the next generation, and hopefully like inspiring people like me, because I certainly got inspired by your work and to try and pursue some of those questions themselves. I mean, I'm not a scientist, but I I like to talk to scientists and and to have it be like available for everyone. So I'm very like thankful and I'm very happy that you decided to to take some time out of your schedule to chat with me. Thank you.
Oh, of course, your words mean a lot, and I appreciate you inviting me to be on your show.